morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Monday, February 6, 2017. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by Brandon Castel. VCast, quite the unbelievable Super Bowl last night. Biggest comeback in Super Bowl history by far. First overtime game in Super Bowl history as the Patriots beat the Falcons 34-28. The Falcons led 28-3 in the second half, but the Patriots came roaring back from there with some help from the Falcons. The only former Ohio State player in this game was special teams ace Nate Ebner from the Patriots. He had the first tackle of the second half on a kickoff. So Ebner won his second Super Bowl ring in the last 3 years, was also on the United States rugby team in the Olympics this past summer. What a whirlwind for him. Just your takeaways, Brandon, from the game and Nate Ebner winning his second Super Bowl ring.
Yeah, first of all, on Nate Ebner, I think it's just an incredible story. A guy who, really didn't play a lot at Ohio State, a guy who obviously didn't have the background in football, but is pretty much world class when it comes to playing rugby. And there hasn't been a lot of guys to make that transition. I know we've seen a couple guys come over from Australia and try to make that switch to playing football, but it is definitely a different sport. But Nate Ebner has been one of those guys, and to be able to stick on a team like the Patriots and to be, when you only got 53 roster spots in the NFL, I think that's the most incredible thing to me is that, in college you've got a much larger roster and you can afford to, go out and offer a scholarship to guys who could be really big special teams players, some long snappers, punters, kickers, and, that you can afford to have some extra guys on your roster. There are no extra roster spots in the NFL. You got to be a guy who they can absolutely count on to be one of the best 53 players, and go out there every week and bring it. So for Ebner to be able to stick around like he has in the league and, again, take that leave of absence to go play on the Olympic team and then come back, rejoin the team, and really become a contributor and a guy who can make a play at that level in the Super Bowl, it's pretty impressive for a guy who, doesn't have that background. But the game itself, an incredible game. Didn't really shock me in anything. I had a lot of people asking me before the game, who did I think was going to win? And I said, I honestly don't know who's going to win this game because I truly believe that the Atlanta Falcons, top to bottom, are the better football team. They're more balanced. They've got more weapons. They've got an MVP quarterback. I like their coaching staff. I think Kyle Shanahan's done an incredible job with this offense. They've got two great backs, and their defense is playing at a really high level. So if you were to just take away, the matchup, I think the Atlanta Falcons are the better team. We saw that for 2.5 quarters. I said, but I will have a hard time ever betting against Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. And we saw that for the rest of the game. They overcame pick sixes and drop passes, and they called every right play down the stretch, all the 2-point conversion plays. Even when they botched the onside kick, I thought that when they didn't get that onside kick, I thought that's it. They went for it early and they didn't get it, and Atlanta kind of needs to just get one more swing here and put this thing away, and they couldn't do it. And once they got into overtime, got the ball, and Brady was going down the field, you could just see a different team. The Falcons looked worn out, and Brady looked like he was had just finally found it. So that was a crazy finish, but not surprising for a guy like Tom Brady with what he's done.
Yeah, it's amazing. Previously the biggest comeback in Super Bowl history was 10 points, and the Patriots came back from 25 down in the second half to win. Just pretty unbelievable. All right, let's now pivot to Ohio State football, what everybody's really tuning into the show for. Brandon, looking ahead to the 2017 season for the Buckeyes, what concerns you the most about this team?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because we've got a long way to go, but I think there's some obvious points to me that concern me, and it's not that much different than some of the things that concern me going into last season. I think there's a lot of different things that we can assume are going to be improved this year. But first and foremost, I am concerned about the wide receiver position. Kind of the same as we were last year, and we knew a little bit about some of those guys. We knew they had Noah Brown coming back, which was a guy that they had planned to rely on. We knew they had Corey Smith coming back. But I was concerned about the receiver position last year when they lost Braxton Miller and Michael Thomas and Jalen Marshall. And, I'm still concerned about the receiver position. I didn't see enough guys make plays this year. I didn't see a lot of guys, who ran incredible routes and could get the timing down with JT Barrett. I didn't see anybody who could really take the top off the defense. So, I like some of those guys. I like KJ Hill. I like Benjamin Victor. I like a little bit of what I've seen of Terry McLaurin. He seems like he can kind of be a spot guy who can maybe make a few big catches for you late in the game. But I just haven't seen enough from anyone else. I never saw Parris Campbell really take the lead. Didn't really see anything from Johnny Dixon, who was a guy who maybe could have stretched the field for them. So I'm concerned about that position probably more than anything else on the field. I'm a little concerned. I'll be interested to see what they do up front on the offensive line. I just don't know where the depth is going to come from. Isaiah Prince really struggled most of last season in pass protection, and now you lose Pat Elflein and you slide, Price over to center. So it'd be interesting to see, who fills in there. Where do they get those bodies from? Can Isaiah Prince take that next step? I think that's probably the single most critical factor. Not concerned yet, but definitely something to keep an eye on.
And when you analyze this team going into next season, what does not concern you?
Well, I think the defense will be really good again. I know they're going to lose a bunch of guys that made plays in that secondary, and it's not going to be easy to replace Conley and Lattimore and obviously Hooker, who is their big play guy. So they're going to have to be a little bit of a different defense than they were last year, and they lose their leader, Raekwon McMillan, and you kind of hear all that and think, okay, well, they got a lot to work on defensively, but I really like the front seven, what they have coming back next season. Obviously with Jalen Holmes returning and with Tyquan Lewis returning and Sam Hubbard returning. And then you've got guys like Nick Bosa, who I think are going to, obviously take that next step. You got Robert Landers, who had a really good, kind of rookie campaign last year. And then I think the linebacking core will be pretty good again. I mean, I think, Jerome Baker, obviously, and Chris Worley are coming back, and those guys really played well last season. And then I think, if we talked about this before, if Dante Booker could move over and replace Raekwon at middle linebacker, I think you've got a pretty good front seven defensively. Got some stuff to do on the back end, but I think Greg Schiano did an incredible job last year with that unit. I think we'll see some of these younger guys kind of emerge this year as well, whether that's whoever that is on the back end. It could be a number of guys who I think Fuller's the guy obviously to look for at safety, and we've heard some of the names at corner, but I think the defense will be pretty good. And I think the running game should be pretty good. Now I'll be interested to see, what they can do in the passing game now with Kevin Wilson in there to run the offense. That's kind of I think if you're going to be excited about anything going into next year, you have to be excited that Kevin Wilson can bring in a presence in the passing game, which they lacked really the last two seasons.
I am definitely excited about that. As anybody who's listened to this show knows, I'm probably more excited than Mrs. Wilson about this whole situation. I absolutely love it. I'm taking credit for it. Urban Meyer's acting like he's taking credit for it, but I'm going to take credit for it. Just a little bit of joking there. A couple more questions, and I'll turn you loose, my friend. Do you feel like Mike Weber is locked in as the starting tailback, and just your take on Mike Weber in general, and do you feel like J.K. Dobbins could give him a legit run for his money for the starting job?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think J.K. Dobbins is one of those guys who comes in and immediately you're gonna see some people paying attention to him. You're gonna see him flash. I mean, if you look at what this guy did at the high school level, and I never totally rely on high school stats. I mean, obviously some guys have put up some big numbers in high school, and I always thought Dontre Wilson was going to be that big play guy at Ohio State because of the numbers he put up in the running game and passing game and return game in high school at a really high level in Texas. And so Dobbins is putting up some unbelievable numbers. I mean, back-to-back seasons with over 2,000 yards on the ground. I think he's had something like 70 rushing touchdowns the last 2 years. I mean, just ridiculous numbers. Obviously, he was the number 2 all-purpose back in 24/7's ranking. So we know this kid's legit, and I think you're going to see a little bit of a difference in terms of explosiveness between him and maybe some of the other guys on the roster. I don't know that I think he's going to come in and beat out Mike Weber for the starting job. I mean, I look at Mike Weber's season last year. The kid was pretty good. Now, he wasn't Zeke Elliott, and, he didn't have a lot of those big, long breakaway runs. But, he was pretty steady over the course of the season, got to 1,000 yards, averaged 6 yards per carry. I think the offense was a mess last season. They couldn't pass the ball. J.T. Barrett did not have a great season, in my opinion, in terms of running the offense overall. And at the end of the year, you see a huge change at the most important position on the offense and offensive coordinator. So clearly there were a lot of things going wrong last season that you can't throw all at Mike Weber and say, well, he's never going to be Zeke Elliott, so let's get someone else in there. I think Mike Weber's going to be one of your staples on offense. Now, does that mean we'll never see J.K. Dobbins? No, I think he's probably going to emerge, as the number 2 back and a guy you've got to get on the field. I just don't think he's going to come in and take the job from Mike Weber.
It's my contention that Demario McCall is a lock to be the starting hybrid, the Curtis Samuel role. I mean, there's going to be other guys that play that position, but I think, Demario McCall is going to be the starter there. But I want to focus more on the running back position. Do you feel like, can Antonio Williams be a guy that is not just a guy they put in there in garbage time? Can he be a guy that really factors in the mix as a redshirt freshman next year? And furthermore, can you envision Parris Campbell moving to running back or moving to H-back?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it depends. Again, it somewhat depends on what happens with Dobbins. I mean, if Dobbins comes in and he's everything that it looks like he could be, I think he's going to jump in and really compete, and not only with Antonio Williams, but I think he's going to compete for some snaps on that first team. If he's as good and ready to carry the ball and can come in and pick up the playbook and, ball security and all the things you look for in a young back. So there's a lot of assumptions we're making that we don't know yet about a young back, but, I think there's a chance for Antonio Williams to be in the mix. He's a bigger guy, than Dobbins is. He's a guy that can come in and run between the tackles. I didn't see, in the times that we saw Antonio Williams, I didn't see anything that really jumped off the page to me. But the fact he can square his pads, he can get between the tackles, he can give you a little bit more power. It kind of depends on what they're looking for. I think you're getting enough power from Mike Weber that you don't necessarily need that, but I think it's good. I mean, they don't have a lot of depth right now, so I think that absolutely you're looking at a guy who's probably going to get some carries and certainly will be in the mix. But I don't know if I see him being a huge factor in the season if everybody's healthy and if Dobbins comes in and can get on the field.
Great insights, as always, from Brandon Castel. You can catch his column on Bucknuts. It is Thinking Out Loud. Thank you very much, BCast, and thanks to all the listeners out there for tuning into the show. I appreciate it, and I hope you have a great day. Let's hear some Buckeye swag. Best damn band in the land.